Have you ever wandered into a forest so deep and so strange that it felt as though the trees themselves were alive, watching, waiting, whispering secrets through the rustling leaves? Some say there are places in this world where time bends, where shadows twist longer than they should, and where a traveler might stumble upon something that doesn't belong to the ordinary world. Tonight, on Night Story, we're stepping into one of those places, into a legend that has haunted generations, woven into old fireside tales and hushed warnings to curious children. Welcome, dear listeners, to another journey through the eerie and the mysterious. I'm glad you've joined me tonight, because the story we're about to share isn't just a tale from some forgotten book of folklore, it's a living legend, a creature, a house, and a cursed forest all tied together by whispers of magic, hunger, and fear. This is the story of Baba Yaga and her strange, terrifying home, the house on chicken legs. Now, before we step onto the crooked path that leads into her domain, let me set the scene for you. Imagine a cold Russian night in the heart of a sprawling forest. The snow has blanketed the earth so thickly that the trees stand like black skeletons against a pale, moonlit sky. The air is sharp enough to bite, and silence presses in from every side. A traveler, maybe a desperate villager, maybe a lost child, moves carefully through the snow, the crunch of each step echoing like a warning. And then, just when they think they're alone, they see it, through the trees, a flicker of orange light. Fire. A hearth. A home. A miracle in the wilderness. But this is no ordinary home. It creaks and groans as though alive. The walls are crooked, the chimney spews smoke in sighs instead of puffs, and the house itself is standing on legs. Great, bony chicken legs, talons curling into the earth, shifting and scratching as though impatient. Sometimes the house turns its back to the traveler, sometimes it pivots to face them directly, its windows like watchful eyes. And if the traveler dares to come closer, they may hear the creak of bones, the shuffle of feathers, the groan of wood as the house rises and moves. This is Baba Yaga's dwelling. A house as restless as its mistress. And who is Baba Yaga? Well, she is no simple witch. She is a figure older than memory, older than fairy tales. In some stories, she is a monster, a devourer of children, her teeth sharp as knives and her hunger never sated. In others, she is a guardian of wisdom, a keeper of impossible tasks, granting help only to those clever, or desperate, enough to earn it. She is both villain and guide, cruelty and necessity, and above all, a force of the forest itself. But tonight, I want to take you deeper into her story, not just the old tales you may have heard in passing, but a tale stitched together from the bones of many, fleshed out with shadows and whispers, so that we may walk through the cursed forest ourselves and stand at the door of that strange, chicken-legged house. There was once a girl named Anya, who lived on the edge of a village at the border of the great forest. Her people feared the woods, calling it cursed, warning that no one should go too deep beneath its canopy. Hunters sometimes returned with strange scars, and children who strayed too far often never returned at all. The villagers said it was the doing of Baba Yaga, though none could agree on whether she was a demon, a sorceress, or death itself in disguise. Anya, however, had grown up listening to the wind in the trees. She often sat at the forest's edge and watched how the light changed between the trunks, how birds would fly in but not always out. There was something about the woods that pulled at her, something that whispered just beyond her understanding. But she obeyed her parents and stayed near the village. Until the winter of hunger came. That year, the snow fell early and heavy. Crops had rotted, game was scarce, and even the most seasoned hunters returned empty-handed. By midwinter, the villagers' faces had grown gaunt, their fires weak, their hope thinner than the broth they tried to stretch into meals. And when Anya's little brother, Pyotr, fell ill, her mother wept, knowing there was nothing left to feed him. It was then that Anya remembered the old stories. They said Baba Yaga's house moved through the forest, searching, listening. They said sometimes, if you could find it and survive its mistress's gaze, you could bargain for what you needed. But they also said Baba Yaga ate the foolish, especially children. Still, Anya looked at her brother's pale face, at her mother's empty eyes, and she made her choice. On the coldest night of that winter, when the moon was sharp and cruel in the sky, she wrapped herself in furs and slipped into the forest. Now, here's where the air seems to change. I always feel a shiver when imagining that first step off the familiar path. The forest beyond the village wasn't just trees and snow, it was another world. The silence there wasn't natural, it was too heavy, too thick, like a blanket pressing down. Even Anya, who had always felt drawn to the woods, felt its weight settle on her chest as soon as she passed the last marker stone. She walked for hours. Her lantern sputtered, the cold gnawed at her, but she kept going, whispering prayers to saints she wasn't sure could hear her through the thicket of branches. And then, when she thought she might collapse, she saw it. At first, it was only smoke, curling above the trees, faint but real. She stumbled toward it, heart pounding. The smell of burning wood drifted on the air, promising warmth. But then she saw the house. It stood in a clearing, crooked and strange, its walls covered in moss and bone charms, its roof sagging under snow. The firelight flickered in its window, but it wasn't the house itself that made Anya freeze. It was the legs. Great, scaly legs, like those of a monstrous bird, sprouted from beneath the house. They shifted and scratched, bending as though impatient. And when the house turned toward her, yes, turned, its steps groaning and thudding against the frozen ground, Anya nearly dropped her lantern. The window glowed like an eye. And somewhere inside, she thought she heard laughter. That was how Anya found Baba Yaga's house. And that was how her true trial began. Anya's breath caught in her throat as the house shifted again, the enormous legs bending and straightening with a groan of wood and bone. She had heard stories her whole life, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The thing before her was not a simple cottage in the woods. It was alive. The talons scraped across the frozen ground, kicking up snow and dirt, and the house gave a low, unsettling creak like a groan from deep within its timbers. The longer Anya stared, the more she realized the house wasn't just watching her, it was listening. Every crunch of her boots, every tremble of her breath, the house seemed to soak it in, waiting for her next move. Her first instinct was to run, to throw herself back into the safety of the trees and never look back. But then she thought of her brother's pale face, the way he coughed through the night, the way her mother's hands had grown too thin and weak to comfort him. She couldn't go back empty-handed. She had to be brave, braver than anyone had ever asked her to be. So she stood straighter, gripping her lantern tighter, and called out in a voice that shook only slightly. "Baba Yaga," she said, her words trailing into the cold night air. "I seek your help." For a long moment, there was only silence. The house shifted, one massive claw digging into the earth, and then the door creaked open. Warm, golden firelight spilled out, painting the snow in amber. It should have been inviting, but instead it looked like a mouth yawning wide. A shadow flickered across the doorway, tall, bent, and crooked. And then she appeared. Baba Yaga. Her figure filled the frame of the door. She was taller than Anya expected, her back hunched yet still commanding, her tangled hair wild and gray as storm clouds. Her nose was long, sharp, hooked like a hawk's beak. Her eyes burned yellow in the firelight, sharp and unblinking, as though they could pierce straight into the marrow of Anya's bones. "Well, well," Baba Yaga croaked, her voice a rasp of smoke and stone. "A little bird has wandered into my clearing. Do you come to feed me, child?" The word struck Anya like a blade. She had known the stories, how Baba Yaga feasted on the flesh of the unwary, how she devoured children whole, but hearing the witch's voice, hearing her hunger laced into every syllable, made her knees tremble. But she could not falter. "I come to bargain," Anya said, forcing strength into her words. "My brother is sick. My family is starving. They say you can grant what others cannot." For a moment, Baba Yaga simply stared. Then a laugh bubbled up from her throat, low at first, then shrieking, sharp enough to make the very trees around them groan as though in pain. "Bargain?" She spat. "Do you think you can name your price with me, little one?" "No. In my forest, I set the price. And the price is always high." She beckoned with a twisted hand, her nails long and black as claws. "Come closer. Let me see what kind of morsel dares to speak of bargains." Every instinct screamed at Anya to stay back. But again, the memory of her brother pulled her forward. She stepped into the clearing, closer to the house, closer to Baba Yaga herself. The air near the door was warmer, thick with a smell of smoke and herbs, but beneath it was something else, something metallic and bitter, like blood. "Ah," Baba Yaga hissed, circling Anya with surprising swiftness for someone so bent and aged. "I smell desperation. I taste fear. Yes, you've come a long way, haven't you?" Her yellow eyes narrowed, and for a terrible moment Anya thought the witch might simply strike her down and devour her on the spot. But instead, Baba Yaga leaned back, stroking her chin with a gnarled hand. Very well. If it is a bargain you want, a bargain you shall have. But nothing in this forest comes without a task. 3 tasks you must complete for me, girl. Fail even one, and I'll crack your bones for soup. Anya's heart hammered. 3 tasks. That was how the stories always went. Impossible tasks, cruel and clever. And those who failed never returned? What tasks? Anya asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Baba Yaga's grin stretched wide, revealing teeth sharp and crooked, glinting like metal in the firelight. You'll see, she said. But tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, your trials begin. With a snap of her fingers, the house lowered itself, the great legs folding until the doorway hung just above the ground. The inside glowed with an eerie warmth, shadows dancing along the crooked walls. Baba Yaga gestured toward the open door. Enter, if you dare. Anya hesitated. Stepping inside felt like stepping into the belly of a beast. But the cold night behind her was no kinder, and she knew she would need her strength for whatever tasks lay ahead. So, with a deep breath, she climbed the creaking steps and crossed the threshold. The interior of the house was stranger still. The walls were lined with shelves of jars filled with things that seemed to twitch and move in the firelight: roots, eyes, small bones, feathers, even shapes she couldn't quite name. The air smelled of ash, honey, and decay all at once. A massive oven loomed in the corner, its mouth glowing faintly red. Anya's skin prickled at the sight of it. She knew too well what the stories said about that oven. Baba Yaga shuffled inside after her, the door slamming shut on its own. The witch's laugh echoed as she gestured to a small wooden bench. Sit. Tomorrow, the forest will test you. If you succeed, perhaps your brother will live. If you fail... She licked her lips slowly, hungrily. Well, you'll keep me fed through the winter. Anya sat, her body rigid, her heart thundering in her chest. The house creaked around her, its walls groaning as though alive. Somewhere outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers she couldn't quite make out. That night, she barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the house's legs outside, every breath of Baba Yaga as she stirred her pot sent fear clawing through her. And yet, beneath it all, there was a strange spark inside Anya, a spark of determination. She had come this far. She would not fail. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through the windows, Baba Yaga's voice cut through the silence. Up, girl, she barked. The forest waits. Let us see if you're clever enough to survive your first task. Anya stood, her legs trembling but steady enough to carry her forward. She didn't know what the day would bring, only that it would test her in ways she had never imagined. And as the house creaked and shifted on its great legs once more, she realized something with a chill that ran deeper than the winter wind. The cursed forest was alive. And it had been waiting for her. The morning inside Baba Yaga's house was darker than night. The fire in the oven burned low, casting long, crooked shadows that danced like grasping hands along the walls. Anya rose from the hard bench, stiff from the cold and from fear. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake the weight of little sleep, and found Baba Yaga already standing over her, eyes sharp and teeth bared in a grin that was far from friendly. Well, the witch hissed, you've lived through the night. Some don't. That's worth something, perhaps. But let's see if you can do more than cower in a corner. She clapped her long, bony hands together, and the house shuddered in response. The jars rattled on their shelves, and a gust of foul-smelling smoke puffed from the oven. Your first task, Baba Yaga croaked, is simple. At least, it should be, for someone clever. Today you will go into the forest and gather for me every seed spilled in the snow by the great oak. Not one must be left behind. Fail, and into the oven you go. Anya's heart sank. She knew the tree Baba Yaga meant, the great oak that stood deep in the forest, where birds flocked and scattered seeds by the thousands. To collect each one seemed impossible, especially when the forest floor was buried in snow. But she didn't argue. She bowed her head, clenched her fists, and said, I will try. Baba Yaga's laugh was cruel and sharp, echoing through the crooked beams of the house. Try, yes. We shall see if trying keeps your bones out of my stew. The door swung open on its own, and the house groaned as though shifting its weight. Anya stepped out into the biting cold, the forest stretching endless and white before her. Behind her, Baba Yaga's voice drifted through the door. Remember, girl. Every seed. Not one left behind. The door slammed shut, leaving her alone. Anya trudged through the snow, her breath fogging the air. Each step was heavy, weighed down by dread. She found the oak soon enough, its massive trunk rising like a pillar, its branches clawing into the sky. Around its base, the snow was littered with the dark specks of fallen seeds, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, scattered in every direction. Her chest tightened. This was hopeless. Even if she spent days here, she could never gather them all. And if she returned without completing the task, Baba Yaga would not forgive her. She dropped to her knees, scooping handfuls of seeds into the folds of her shawl. Her fingers went numb from the cold, her breath ragged, her eyes burning with tears of frustration. The more she gathered, the more endless the task seemed. As the hours passed, the sky darkened with the approach of dusk. Anya's strength waned. Her hands bled from scraping through ice. She thought of her brother, of his small body curled beneath thin blankets, and for a moment despair overwhelmed her. She sank back against the oak's trunk, tears freezing on her cheeks. And then she heard it. A flutter. A rustle. The sound of wings. Anya looked up and gasped. The air above the oak filled with birds, sparrows, crows, finches, dozens of them, circling and perching on the branches. One by one, they swooped down, pecking at the seeds on the ground, gathering them in their beaks, their tiny claws scratching through the snow. They worked quickly, darting back and forth, carrying seeds into a pile at Anya's feet. She stared, stunned. It was as if the forest itself had heard her sorrow. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, every seed was gathered into a neat mound. The birds chirped once, twice, then vanished back into the trees, leaving only silence and Anya's pounding heart. She bundled the seeds into her shawl and hurried back through the snow. When she returned to the clearing, the house loomed against the twilight, its legs shifting impatiently. The door creaked open before she could knock, and Baba Yaga stood waiting, her eyes gleaming. "Well?" the witch hissed. "Did you fail, as I expected?" With trembling arms, Anya laid the bundle at Baba Yaga's feet. "Every seed," she whispered. "Not one left behind." For a long moment, Baba Yaga said nothing. Then her grin widened, showing every crooked tooth. "Interesting," she said softly. "Very interesting. Few ever return from their first task. Fewer still succeed. Perhaps you are not such a weak morsel after all." She swept up the seeds, her bony fingers twitching as though counting each one. Her eyes flicked back to Anya. "But do not grow comfortable, little bird. The forest is only just beginning to test you. Tomorrow, the task will be harder." That night, Anya sat once more on the wooden bench, her body aching but her spirit alight with a fragile spark of hope. Something, whether fate, or the kindness of the forest, or perhaps even the unseen will of the cursed woods themselves, had saved her. But Baba Yaga's words gnawed at her, echoing in her skull as she drifted into uneasy sleep. Harder? Tomorrow would be harder. And deep within the forest, something else stirred, as though aware of the girl who had dared to challenge the witch's will. When Anya awoke the next morning, her body felt as though it had been carved from stone. Every muscle ached, her fingers stiff with cuts and frostbite. Yet she pushed herself upright, because she knew Baba Yaga would not wait. The witch had promised harder trials, and Anya could almost feel the weight of that promise pressing down on her chest. The house groaned, its timbers creaking as though alive. Baba Yaga was already awake, of course, hunched over a steaming pot, the air thick with a bitter smell that made Anya's stomach churn. The witch stirred with a long bone, muttering words that seemed to twist the air into knots. When she noticed Anya watching, Baba Yaga straightened, her yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. "Ah, the little bird wakes," she rasped. "Not broken yet. That's good. It makes the game more interesting." She set aside her bone stirrer, lips curling into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Your first task was for the forest," she continued. "But the second? The second is for me." Anya's heart skipped. "What must I do?" Baba Yaga clapped her hands, and the house shuddered in response. The door swung open, letting in the pale morning light. "Today," the witch hissed, "you must fetch water from the Black River and carry it back here in this." She reached onto a shelf and pulled down a sieve. A simple, wooden sieve, riddled with holes. She shoved it into Anya's trembling hands. Anya stared at it, disbelief crashing over her. "But it will not hold water." Baba Yaga's grin widened. "That is not my problem. Return with the river water before nightfall, or the oven will welcome you instead. And with that, she turned her back, her laughter echoing off the crooked walls. Anya clutched the sieve, cold dread pooling in her stomach. She stepped outside into the forest, the snow crunching beneath her boots, and looked down at the useless tool in her hands. Carry water in this? Impossible. The path to the Black River was long and winding. The trees loomed taller here, their bark blackened, their branches twisted like gnarled claws. No bird sang. No wind stirred. It was as though the forest itself was holding its breath. When at last she reached the riverbank, Anya stopped and shivered. The water was unlike any she had ever seen, dark as ink, flowing sluggishly, with a surface that reflected no light. It smelled faintly of rotten iron, and as she peered closer, she thought she saw shapes moving beneath the surface, too large, too strange to be fish. She knelt, trembling, and dipped the sieve into the current. Water rushed in, then spilled out immediately through the holes, leaving nothing behind. Again she tried. Again it failed. She worked until her hands were raw, her tears falling into the black water, but still the sieve would not hold. Despair threatened to consume her. She sank to her knees, clutching the sieve, and whispered, "I cannot do this. I will fail. I will die." But then, faintly, she heard a sound. Not the rush of water. Not the creak of trees. A whisper, soft and lilting, carried on the cold air. "Do not give up, child." Anya's head snapped up. She looked around wildly, but the riverbank was empty. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The water rippled, and from its surface rose a figure, a woman, pale as moonlight, her hair flowing like riverweed, her eyes deep pools of sorrow. She was not flesh, not fully, her form wavered as though half made of mist. Anya recoiled. "What are you?" The woman's voice was soft, melodic, and unbearably sad. "I am the spirit of this river. Long ago, Baba Yaga cursed me, bound me here to flow in darkness. I know her tasks. I know her cruelty. But you are different. You have come not for greed, but for love." Anya's throat tightened. "My brother is dying. If I fail, I cannot save him." The spirit drifted closer, her form shimmering above the dark current. She reached out a hand of water and touched the sieve. "Then you must not fail. Listen to me. Take the sieve, smear its holes with clay from the riverbed. Seal them with the mud of this cursed water. Only then will it carry what you need." Anya blinked through her tears, hope flaring within her chest. She plunged her hands into the icy river, scooping thick black clay from beneath the surface. She worked quickly, pressing it into the sieve's holes, her fingers numb and aching. When at last every gap was sealed, she dipped it into the river once more. This time, the water stayed. Heavy, dark, and full, it filled the sieve as though it were a proper bucket. Anya gasped, clutching it tight. "Thank you," she whispered, looking up. But the spirit was gone. Only the river flowed, sluggish and black, as though nothing had ever stirred. She hurried back through the forest, her arms straining beneath the weight of the water. Each step felt endless, her body aching, but she did not spill a drop. By the time she returned to the clearing, the sky was already bleeding into dusk. The house shifted on its legs, groaning as though impatient. Baba Yaga stood in the doorway, her eyes glittering. "Well, little bird," she rasped. "Have you come to me empty-handed?" With the last of her strength, Anya lifted the sieve. The dark water sloshed inside, heavy and whole. She set it at Baba Yaga's feet. The witch bent low, peering into the vessel, and for the briefest moment, her grin faltered. Her eyes flicked to Anya, sharp and suspicious. She muttered. "So, you are cleverer than most. Clever enough to cheat me, perhaps." Her voice grew low, dangerous. "Tell me, girl. Who helped you?" Anya's heart pounded. She remembered the river spirit's warning, Baba Yaga would not forgive betrayal. Slowly, she shook her head. "No one," she whispered. "I found a way." Baba Yaga stared at her for a long, terrible moment. Then she threw back her head and laughed, a laugh that made the clearing tremble. "Good!" she shrieked. "Lie to me, if you must. Trick me, if you dare. It only proves you may be worth my time after all." She scooped up the water, her grin wide and sharp. "But do not celebrate yet, little bird. Tomorrow brings the third task, and it will break you. Or feed me." That night, as Anya curled on the bench, shivering with exhaustion, she knew the witch spoke truth. 2 tasks she had survived, but the third would be the one that decided everything. And somewhere deep in the forest, unseen and waiting, other spirits stirred, their whispers carrying on the icy wind, watching the girl who dared to defy Baba Yaga. Morning came, though Anya barely felt it. Sleep had been a thin, fragile thing, broken by the creaking groans of the house's legs and Baba Yaga's muttering as she paced before the oven. When the witch finally turned her gaze on Anya, there was something new in her smile, something sharp and hungry, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. 2 tasks you've managed, Baba Yaga rasped, her breath reeking of smoke and ash. But do not think that means you are clever enough to win. The 3rd task will show me your true strength, or your weakness. Anya's heart pounded. What must I do? She asked, her voice tight with fear but steady enough not to tremble. Baba Yaga's grin widened. She snapped her fingers, and the door of the house swung open with a groan. Beyond the clearing, the forest stretched wide and endless, cloaked in frost. There is a fire that burns in the skull of the white wolf, the witch hissed. A flame that never dies, even in the blackest winter. Fetch it for me. Bring me the wolf's flame before dawn tomorrow. Fail. And I will roast you in my oven. Anya's blood ran cold. The white wolf. She had heard the tales whispered in the village, warnings meant to keep children from straying too far into the woods. They said the wolf was a creature older than the forest itself, its fur whiter than snow, its eyes burning with the light of an eternal fire. Hunters who had glimpsed it never returned. It was no mere beast. It was something more, something sacred, something cursed. How can I face such a creature? Anya whispered. Baba Yaga leaned closer, her breath hot against Anya's cheek. That is for you to discover. Go now, little bird. The forest is waiting. Anya stepped out into the brittle morning air, her stomach knotted with dread. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she moved deeper into the woods, guided by nothing more than instinct and the faint whisper of a path that seemed to appear beneath her feet. The trees grew denser, their black branches arching above like skeletal arms. The deeper she went, the colder it became, until her breath turned to ice crystals in the air. Hours passed. Her legs ached, her hands shook, and despair began to creep into her heart. Then, just as the last light of day began to fade, she saw it. A glow? Faint at first, then brighter. A flicker of orange and gold among the endless white. She crept closer, her breath shallow, and there, standing in a clearing of untouched snow, was the white wolf. It was larger than any beast she had ever seen, its body towering and powerful, its fur glowing with a light of its own. Its eyes burned like coals, and in its skull, between its ears, a flame danced, steady and eternal. The wolf stood silently, watching her, its breath steaming in great clouds. Anya froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she couldn't. She had come too far, and her brother's life hung in the balance. Slowly, she lowered herself to her knees in the snow. Great wolf, she whispered, her voice breaking. I have been sent by Baba Yaga to take your flame. But I do not wish to steal it. I wish only to save my brother. Please. Show me mercy. The white wolf tilted its head, its burning eyes locked on hers. For a moment, the clearing was silent but for the sound of her heartbeat hammering in her ears. Then the wolf moved. It padded forward, each step slow and deliberate, the snow hissing beneath its paws. Anya trembled as it circled her, its fur glowing like starlight, the heat of its flame brushing against her skin. She dared not move. At last, the wolf stopped before her. It lowered its massive head until its burning gaze was level with hers. And then, it spoke. Not with words, not aloud, but inside her mind, a voice deep and ancient as the earth. Child of men, the wolf said, why should I give my flame to you, when your kind has taken so much from this forest? Tears welled in Anya's eyes. She bowed her head. Because I have nothing else to give. Because my brother will die without me. I do not ask for power or riches or glory. Only enough light to bring him back from the dark. The wolf studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then, with a low, rumbling growl, it leaned forward and touched its muzzle to her chest. Heat surged through her body, not burning, but searing with a force that made her gasp. She felt fire enter her heart, filling her with warmth, strength, and something far older than she could name. When the wolf stepped back, the flame in its skull still burned, but a smaller fire now danced in Anya's hands, bright, steady, eternal. She stared at it in awe. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaking. The wolf's eyes softened, though the fire within them never dimmed. "Remember, child," its voice echoed in her mind. "This flame is not Baba Yaga's. It is yours now. Guard it well, for it carries a price." Before she could ask what that meant, the wolf turned and vanished into the forest, its glowing form dissolving into the snow. Anya clutched the flame to her chest, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. She had done it. She had the fire. But as she turned back toward Baba Yaga's house, a shadow of doubt settled over her. The wolf's warning echoed in her mind. This flame was hers now. And Baba Yaga would not let it go easily. The forest seemed darker on the journey back, as if every tree leaned closer, whispering with voices she couldn't quite understand. The flame burned steady in Anya's hands, its warmth pushing back the frost but never scorching her skin. Still, she couldn't shake the echo of the white wolf's voice. "This flame is not Baba Yaga's. It is yours now. Guard it well, for it carries a price." She stumbled through the snow, exhausted but driven, and at last the crooked silhouette of the house on chicken legs rose before her. Its windows glowed with sickly yellow light, and its legs scraped against the frozen ground as shifted impatiently. Baba Yaga was waiting. Anya forced herself to climb the steps, every creak of the wood beneath her boots a reminder of where she stood. When she entered, the witch was by the hearth, tossing bones into a pot that bubbled with something black and foul. She turned slowly, her eyes gleaming as they fell on the flame in Anya's hands. "Well, well," Baba Yaga hissed, her grin splitting wide enough to show her jagged teeth. "The little bird returns, carrying fire in her nest. I did not think you would survive the white wolf." Anya held the flame closer to her chest. "Here it is," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The fire you asked for." Baba Yaga's bony fingers twitched, greedy, as she stepped forward. But before she could reach for it, the flame flared, burning brighter. It pulsed with heat and light that forced the witch to recoil with a hiss, shielding her face. Anya blinked in surprise. The fire seemed to sense Baba Yaga's hunger, and it would not let her touch it. Baba Yaga's eyes narrowed to slits. "Clever wolf," she muttered. "It gave you more than fire, it gave you its blessing." Anya's heart raced. "Does that mean I've completed your task?" The witch's laugh was low and harsh. "Completed? Perhaps. But do not think this ends our bargain. That flame belongs to me. Hand it over, child, before I take it by force." The house groaned, its walls bending as though listening, its legs stomping restlessly. Shadows stretched long across the floor, curling like claws. Anya clutched the fire tighter, her mind whirling. She remembered the wolf's warning, "This flame is not Baba Yaga's." "No," Anya whispered, surprising even herself. "I won't give it to you." Baba Yaga froze. For a long moment, the only sound was the bubbling of the pot and the rasp of her breathing. Then she laughed again, louder this time, her voice sharp enough to rattle the windows. "Bold little bird," she croaked. "Do you think you can defy me? Do you know how many children I have eaten for less?" Her shadow grew taller, stretching across the walls, her form twisting into something less human with every breath. The air thickened, the smell of smoke and rot pressing down on Anya's lungs. But the flame in her hands pulsed stronger, wrapping her in a shield of warmth that held the darkness back. Anya swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "I've done everything you asked. I spun the thread, I found the key, I brought you the wolf's fire. You promised me my brother's life." The witch's grin sharpened. "Ah, yes. The brother. Always the brother. But did I ever promise you that I would let you go, once you had him?" Anya's blood went cold. She understood now. Baba Yaga's bargains were never meant to be kept. The witch's hunger was endless, her house always needing more souls to keep it alive. And yet, Anya still had the flame. With shaking hands, she raised it higher. "If you won't keep your promise," she whispered, "then I'll use this fire myself." Baba Yaga's eyes flared with fury, her voice dropping to a guttural snarl. "You dare threaten me in my own house?" The floor buckled, the walls groaned, and the oven door creaked open as though ready to swallow her whole. But Anya stood firm, the flame steady in her palms. She didn't know what the fire could do, not yet, but she could feel its power humming in her bones. "Let me see my brother," she demanded, her voice louder now, carried by the strength of the flame. Or I'll burn this house to the ground. For the first time, Baba Yaga hesitated. The great witch, who had stood unchallenged for centuries, narrowed her eyes and studied the small, trembling girl before her. Not with amusement now, but with calculation. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. Finally, Baba Yaga gave a sharp, bitter laugh. Very well, she spat. You will see him. She clapped her hands, and the floorboards groaned as a trapdoor opened. From the darkness below came a faint sound, weak, ragged breathing. Anya's heart leapt. Her brother. She rushed forward, peering into the pit. There he was, pale and thin, but alive. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. Anya? He whispered. Tears burned her cheeks. It's me. I'm here. I'm getting you out. But before she could climb down, Baba Yaga stepped closer, her grin returning, cruel and sharp. Take him if you wish. But remember, child, the forest never gives without taking. You have his life, yes. But what will you pay in return? Anya tightened her grip on the flame, her chest heavy with fear and determination. She had come too far to stop now. Whatever the price was, she would face it. For him. Anya's hands shook as she reached for the ladder leading down into the pit. The flame flickered, but it did not dim. It burned steady in her grasp, as though it knew what was about to happen. She held it high, and the darkness recoiled, showing her the pale, weak form of her brother below. His wrists were bound, his body trembling, but his eyes were open now, locked on hers with a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Hold on, Kolya, she whispered. I'm coming for you. Her boots creaked on the ladder's rungs as she climbed down. The heat of the fire wrapped around them both, warming the pit where the cold had gnawed for so long. She reached his side, setting the flame carefully on the ground beside them. With trembling fingers, she untied the knots at his wrists. The rope hissed, smoking where it touched the light of the flame, and fell apart as if it had been burned through by invisible fire. Kolya sagged into her arms, too weak to stand. She pulled him close, feeling how fragile he'd become, and her chest ached with both relief and sorrow. You're safe now, she said, though the words felt fragile in her mouth. I've got you. Above them, Baba Yaga's shadow loomed at the edge of the trapdoor, long and crooked, her bony fingers curling against the wood. Her voice slid down like smoke. Ah, what a touching scene. Little bird finds her hatchling. But tell me, child, what will you give me in return? For every gift comes with a cost. That is the law of the forest. Anya pressed her forehead against her brother's hair. I have nothing left to give, she whispered. The witch's laughter was low, rumbling, and cruel. Nothing? You carry the wolf's flame. That is more than enough. Anya's stomach nodded. The wolf's words came back, burning in her mind. This flame is not Baba Yaga's. It is yours now. Guard it well, for it carries a price. She realized then what Baba Yaga wanted, not her brother, not even her flesh, but the fire itself. The eternal flame was power, and power was what Baba Yaga craved above all things. I won't give it to you, Anya said, her voice low but firm. She pulled Kolya close and gathered the flame again, holding it in her hands. This isn't yours. It never was. The house groaned, the walls creaking like a storm-tossed ship. The oven door slammed open and shut as if impatient, hungry. The air thickened with the smell of burning flesh. Baba Yaga leaned closer into the trapdoor, her face lit from below by the strange, steady glow of the fire. Her eyes burned with fury. You dare defy me again? She hissed. Do you think the wolf's blessing will protect you forever? Fire burns, child. And sooner or later, it will consume you too. Anya swallowed hard. She knew the witch spoke some kind of truth. The flame had already changed her, she felt its pulse in her veins, in her heartbeat, in her breath. It was as if a part of her no longer belonged to the world she knew. But she also knew she had no choice. Without the fire, they would never escape this cursed house. Without the fire, her brother would die. With Kolya leaning on her, she climbed the ladder back up, step by step, the flame lighting their way. When she reached the floor, Baba Yaga was waiting, her figure hunched and monstrous, her grin a twisted slash across her face. You think you can leave me, child? She rasped. No one leaves Baba Yaga. The forest keeps what it claims. Anya lifted the flame higher. Its light pushed the shadows back, burning them away until the corners of the room were stripped bare. The oven hissed, the bones in the pot cracked and split, and the house shuddered on its legs. "I will leave," Anya said, her voice trembling but unbroken. "And my brother will leave with me. You've had your games, Baba Yaga. You've had your bargains. But this ends now." The witch snarled, her face twisting, her hair writhing like snakes. "Then burn, little bird," she spat. She lunged. Anya didn't think, she only acted. She thrust the flame forward, and it erupted, not wild, not uncontrolled, but fierce and focused. The light roared out, wrapping Baba Yaga in fire. The witch screamed, her voice shrill enough to crack the air, her form twisting and writhing as though she were nothing but shadow and smoke. The house staggered on its legs, crashing against the trees, shaking so hard the walls split. Kolya clung to her, his face buried against her shoulder, as the flame blazed brighter, driving the darkness back. For a heartbeat, Anya thought she saw Baba Yaga's true form flickering beneath the fire, ancient, skeletal, something not fully human at all. And then, with a final, shattering scream, she vanished. The house gave one last shudder and collapsed to its knees, the legs folding beneath it. The roof sagged, the walls cracked, and silence fell. Anya and Kolya stood amid the ruin, the flame hovering in her palms, steady and eternal. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. They were free. For now. But as she looked at the fire, at the way it pulsed in her hands like a living heart, she knew Baba Yaga's words were not just a threat. Fire burned. Fire consumed. And the price of carrying it was only just beginning. The night was eerily still after Baba Yaga's scream faded. The forest held its breath, as though waiting to see what would happen next. The crooked house lay broken behind them, its once living legs twitching in the snow before curling up like the claws of a dead bird. The yellow glow of its windows went dark, leaving only the moonlight and the steady fire in Anya's hands to guide their way. Kolya leaned heavily against her, weak from captivity but alive. Every step felt like a victory, every breath proof that they had stolen something back from the witch who had claimed too many children before. Yet even as relief tried to seep in, Anya couldn't shake the weight of the flame she carried. It wasn't heavy, not in the way a stone was, but it pulsed, throbbed, as though it were a living heart beating against her palms. "Anya," Kolya whispered, his voice raw, "what is that?" She looked down at the fire. Its light danced without smoke, steady and golden, brighter than any torch. For a moment, she saw her own reflection in it, not her face, but her eyes glowing like the wolf's. "It's what saved us," she said softly. "The white wolf gave it to me." Kolya's gaze lingered on the flame, and then he closed his eyes, too exhausted to ask more. She tightened her grip on him and kept moving. The forest path stretched endless and unfamiliar. She could not tell if she was heading toward home or deeper into the cursed wood. But the flame lit the ground before her, and for now that was enough. Hours passed. The night deepened. The cold grew sharper, biting at her skin, but the fire's warmth held them both together. And then, suddenly, the trees around her shifted. It was subtle at first. Branches that had hung still began to sway without wind. Shadows rippled where no light touched. The silence broke into whispers, low and harsh, coming from the black hollows between the trunks. Anya stopped, her heart hammering. She knew that sound. The forest was speaking again. The whispers rose, hissing, circling her. "Thief! Thief! You carry what is not yours. Burn, child. Burn with it." She clutched the flame tighter, stepping back. "No," she whispered fiercely. "This was given to me. It's mine." The trees groaned, their bark splitting, dark sap oozing like blood. Shapes moved between them, tall, gaunt figures with hollow eyes, their limbs too long, their mouths gaping. The forest spirits. She had heard of them in lullabies and warnings, the guardians of the wood who served Baba Yaga's will. Kolya stirred weakly, opening his eyes. "Anya? Don't look," she told him, though her own voice trembled. She raised the flame higher. At once, the spirits hissed and shrank back, their forms bending away from the fire's glow. But they did not vanish. They circled, waiting, their whispers scratching like claws at her skull. "It will eat you alive. It always does." Anya's arms shook. She wanted to believe they were lying, just tricks of the forest meant to break her courage. But she could feel the truth in their words. The flame inside her hands was not harmless. It was alive. And it wanted more than to simply warm or protect, it wanted to spread, to consume. The memory of the white wolf's eyes returned to her. Fierce. Burning. Ancient. He had given her this, but he had not freed her from it. Kolia's hand tugged weakly at her sleeve. Don't stop, he whispered. She swallowed the knot of fear in her throat. I won't. Step by step, she pushed forward, the flame casting a circle of light that kept the spirits at bay. They hissed and writhed, but they dared not touch her. Still, their whispers followed her deeper into the night, each one digging under her skin. At last, the trees began to thin. The air grew lighter. And there, in the distance, she saw it, a faint line of gray light on the horizon. Dawn. Her heart leapt. They were close. If she could just keep moving until the sun rose, perhaps the forest would lose its hold. Perhaps they could find their way home. But the flame flickered in her hands, and for the first time it did not burn steady. It pulsed wildly, surging, flaring higher than before. Heat rolled off it in waves, so intense that Kolia whimpered and shielded his face. Anya, he gasped. It's burning too bright. She stumbled, clutching it desperately. The fire licked at her fingers, not harming her but trying to slip free, as though it wanted to leap into the trees, into the air, into the world. She clenched her jaw and held it tighter. No, she whispered through gritted teeth. Not yet. You're mine. You stay with me. The flame hissed, and for an instant she felt its voice inside her, wordless but clear. I am not yours. You are mine. Her knees buckled. She nearly fell, but Kolia clung to her, and together they staggered toward the dawn. The spirits shrieked behind them, their shapes dissolving with the coming light, but Anya knew this was not the end. The white wolf had given her a gift, but it was also a burden, one that was already changing her. The forest had lost this battle, yes. But the fire was far from finished with her. And somewhere, in the ashes of the broken house, Baba Yaga's laughter still lingered on the wind. The first pale streaks of dawn brushed across the sky, painting the horizon in silver and rose. Anya staggered through the thinning trees, every muscle screaming, Kolia leaning against her, barely conscious. The ground beneath her boots felt firmer now, less tangled by roots and shadow. The cursed forest was loosening its grip. She could see it, just ahead, past a final line of dark pines, the open fields that stretched toward their village. Her heart surged. They had made it. But the flame in her hands burned hotter than ever, blazing like a second sun. Its light pushed back the dawn itself, casting long, strange shadows even as the real sun rose. It pulsed with hunger, riding against her grip as though it no longer wished to be carried. Kolia groaned, shielding his face from its brightness. Anya. It's too much. Put it down. Please. She looked at him, her heart torn. He was right, the fire was no longer a gentle warmth. It was a storm, alive and demanding. And deep inside, she felt its heat crawling through her veins, changing her, claiming her. The white wolf's words came back, as sharp as the morning frost. This flame is not Baba Yaga's. It is yours now. Guard it well, for it carries a price. Anya stopped at the edge of the clearing, staring down at the flame. The snow around her had melted into steaming earth, green shoots already breaking through where winter should have ruled. The fire wasn't just protecting. It was reshaping the world, bending it to its will. Kolia, she whispered, if I let it go. I don't know what it will do. It could burn everything. The village, the fields, even us. He looked at her with wide, tired eyes. Then don't let it go. Keep it. Her chest tightened. If I keep it, it might burn me instead. The wind shifted. Behind them, the forest groaned, the last whispers of the spirits curling like smoke. And in that moment, Anya knew she was standing between two worlds, the one she had fought so hard to return to, and the one the flame now tied her to. She looked at her brother, frail and clinging to life, the only piece of family she had left. Then she looked at the fire, burning steady and eternal in her hands. And she made her choice. Slowly, she knelt in the snow at the edge of the forest. She set the flame down before her, its light flaring bright enough to blind. She pressed her palms together and whispered, You don't belong with Baba Yaga. You don't belong with me. You belong to the wolf. Go back to him. The fire hissed, roaring higher, fighting against her words. It licked at her arms, her face, her heart, trying to draw her in. She grit her teeth, forcing every ounce of will into her voice. I release you. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the flame let out a sound like a howl, long, mournful, wild. It leapt from her hands, spinning into the air, a streak of gold and white. For an instant, the shape of the white wolf appeared in the blaze, its eyes burning with the same eternal light. It met Anya's gaze, and she felt both its blessing and its warning one last time. Then the flame streaked back into the forest, vanishing into the shadows of the trees. The weight lifted from her chest. Her arms trembled with emptiness, as though she had set down something far heavier than fire. The air cooled, the snow settled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe. Kolya's small hand found hers. "You did it," he whispered. Anya turned toward the rising sun. The village lay ahead, waiting. They were not free from the scars of what had happened, not free from the memory of Baba Yaga's bargain, but they were alive. Together. She helped Kolya take his first steps out of the forest. The trees groaned behind them, but they did not follow. And though she knew the witch's laughter would echo in her mind for years to come, she also knew something else. She had carried fire and lived. She had faced the darkness and found her way back. The cursed forest would remain, and Baba Yaga would always hunger. But so long as stories were told, so long as the flame of courage lived in the hearts of those who dared to listen, there would always be light enough to face the dark. And with that, Anya and her brother walked into the dawn, leaving the house on chicken legs to crumble behind them, its legend carried on the whispers of the trees. When I think back on this journey through the cursed forest, the strange house on chicken legs, and the haunting figure of Baba Yaga, I realize it was never only about monsters or dark magic. It was about fear, temptation, choices, and how legends can slip under our skin and feel almost real when told in the right way. The house itself was more than just a trick of folklore, it was a symbol of hunger, of desire, of the constant shifting ground beneath our lives. And Baba Yaga, as terrifying as she seemed, was also a mirror of the things we don't want to face in ourselves: greed, weakness, and the weight of curiosity that pushes us into dangerous places. This story has always lingered with me, because it asks a question we often avoid: what price are we willing to pay when the forest whispers our name? For some, the answer might be power. For others, survival. For most of us, maybe it's a chance to understand the shadows that have always frightened us. And that's what makes stories like this endure. They carry warnings, yes, but also strange gifts. They remind us that darkness has lessons. That courage doesn't always mean defeating the monster, sometimes it just means daring to listen to the story and not turning away. I hope tonight's tale gave you chills, but also something deeper to think about when you're lying awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering if the scratching sound outside your window is just the wind. Or the forest itself, shifting a little closer. Thank you for staying with me through this long, winding journey into the realm of Baba Yaga and her restless, hungry house. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Night Story, where the shadows are always waiting to be explored. Leave a like if the story gave you shivers, and share your thoughts or your own encounters with folklore and legends in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, keep your lantern close, your courage closer, and remember, when you hear the scratching of talons in the woods, it might just be the house on chicken legs, turning to face you. Good night, and stay curious.